They're not just buying Canadian oil. They're ditching the US altogether. That's not an exaggeration. That's the new reality. China has slashed its US crude imports by 90%. Just a few years ago, they were buying 29 million barrels a month. Now, just 3 million. Meanwhile, China is importing record-breaking amounts of Canadian crude, 7.3 million barrels in March alone, and it looks like they'll break that record again this month. So what happened? A pipeline, a trade war, and a quiet but powerful strategy to reshape global trade, not just in oil, but in money. Let's walk through how Canada became China's new favorite oil dealer, and what that says about the world we're heading into. It all started with a pipeline expansion in Western Canada, the Trans Mountain Expansion Project, or TMX. Opened less than a year ago, it connects the vast oil sands in Alberta with the Pacific port of Vancouver. Suddenly, Canadian crude, heavy, cheap, and perfect for China's refineries, had a fast track to Asia. Chinese refiners didn't waste any time. Imports from that one port alone jumped to an unprecedented 7.3 million barrels in March, and more is on the way. Meanwhile, imports from the US have collapsed. We're not talking about a small dip. This is a full-blown collapse, a deliberate pivot. Why? One word: tariffs. When Donald Trump took office, he made it clear he was ready to shake up global trade. That meant tariffs on Chinese goods, tensions in diplomatic circles, and retaliatory measures from Beijing. U.S. crude, once flowing freely to Chinese refiners, suddenly became a geopolitical liability. Wen Ranjiang, president of the Canada-China Energy and Environment Forum, put it bluntly, given the trade war, it's unlikely for China to import more U.S. oil. Anything from Canada will be welcome news. So here's the new energy equation. China needs oil. Canada has it. The U.S. is complicated, but this isn't just about barrels of crude. It's about a much bigger shift. Because energy is power, and China isn't just moving its supply chain, it's moving its money. Let's zoom out. For decades, the US dollar has been the de facto currency of global trade. Oil, priced in dollars, international payments, routed through SWIFT, a US-influenced messaging system. This dollar dominance gave the US massive leverage, sanctions, financial pressure, trade control. But China saw that as a vulnerability, and they're doing something about it. Back in 2010, less than 1% of China's cross-border payments were settled in its own currency, the yuan. The dollar was doing 83% of the heavy lifting. Fast forward to today, that number has flipped dramatically. As of March 2024, more than half, 52.9%, of China's cross-border payments are now made in yuan. Think about that. In just over a decade, the dollar's dominance in Chinese trade has been cut in half. But China isn't stopping there. They're building an entirely separate financial plumbing system, one that doesn't rely on the US at all. Enter the digital yuan, also known as the eCNY. It's a central bank digital currency controlled directly by the People's Bank of China. Think of it as programmable money, traceable, trackable, and easily transferable across borders without going through traditional banking networks like SWIFT. The digital yuan gives China the ability to settle international payments instantly with partners who also want to avoid US oversight. Iran, Russia, even parts of Africa and Southeast Asia, they're watching closely. Some are already experimenting with cross-border digital currency platforms. This is huge, because if you control the currency, you control the rules. And China's not alone in wanting new rules. Across the world, there's a growing club of countries looking to reduce their exposure to the dollar. Brazil and Argentina have started settling trade in yuan. Russia has almost completely stopped using dollars in its trade with China. Even France made headlines by completing a major LNG deal with China, not in euros, not in dollars, but in yuan. It's called de-dollarization, and it's happening right now. The reasons are pretty straightforward. 1, nobody wants to be on the wrong end of US sanctions. 2, countries want more control over their own economies and currencies. And 3, The global south and developing nations are tired of feeling like it's playing by someone else's rules. There's also another leveler that has hit all-time highs recently, and that's gold. Central banks all over the world are stockpiling gold like it's running out of supply. Why? Because it's not beholden to any single country or currency. Now combine that with energy security, and things get real interesting. Because oil is the lifeblood of modern economies. If China can source it reliably from places like Canada, settle the payments in Yuan, and ship it through non-US routes, that's a geopolitical win on every level. For China, it's not just about finding cheaper oil. It's about rewriting the map. A map where the US is no longer the central hub. A map where trade can flow through Beijing, not Washington. Now, to be clear, China isn't trying to destroy the dollar overnight. This isn't some Bond villain scenario. What they're doing is more subtle, more strategic. They're building an alternative, a plan B, and countries are signing up. Most of the BRICS and African nations have already signaled interest in such a system, but there are still big challenges. The yuan isn't fully convertible, trust in China's regulatory system is shaky, capital controls are tight. And the digital yuan, while impressive, still faces concerns over surveillance and privacy. Plus, many global institutions, banks, governments, companies, are deeply invested in the dollar system. Change is hard and slow, but the momentum is there. Energy trade is one of the first places we're seeing the shift. Canadian oil exports to China are just one puzzle piece in a much larger picture. A picture of a world slowly moving away from a single currency, a single power, and a single way of doing things. For Canada, this is a mixed bag. On one hand, selling more oil is great for the economy. On the other hand, getting pulled deeper into the geopolitical tug-of-war between China and the US is a dangerous game. And for the US, the warning lights are flashing. If Washington continues to weaponize the dollar through sanctions and trade wars, it risks pushing even more countries into the arms of alternatives. Let's be honest, nobody likes being told what currency to use, who to trade with, or where they're allowed to send their oil. And now, for the first time in decades, there's an escape hatch. It starts with a pipeline in Alberta. It grows with the rise of a digital currency. And it ends with a question we all have to start asking. What happens when the world no longer runs on dollars? Because that future, it's not decades away. It's already arriving. Barrel by barrel, payment by payment, line of code by line of code. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching.